Following the end of Star Trek Enterprise in 2005, it looked increasingly like we would see no further Star Trek on the small screen. In response, a unique set of circumstances developed by which most of the mainline series up to that point were continued by a small collection of regular authors. These writers were able to do more or less what they wanted, mixing characters and interweaving storylines in a way that had never been possible when the shows were on the air. Allowed a tremendous amount of freedom, their only limits were their imaginations, with the understanding that any stories they pitched had to be based under the general optimism that is Star Trek's guiding principle. As such, for the next 2 decades, these authors, with countless new novels, crafted a mythology that spanned the entirety of Star Trek, with such notable entries as the Star Trek Destiny trilogy by David Mack, which told the tale of the Borg invasion, and the Typhon Pact series, which was its aftermath. A parallel to the Warsaw Pact, we saw an alliance of hostile powers rise up to challenge the Federation in the wake of the Borg assault. I would also point out the Vanguard series, filling in many critical gaps in lore from between the TOS films and TNG. Although I could mention many more, for the sake of brevity I will simply state that for those of us who could never get enough Trek, these novels were a blessing. Though I would be remiss if I did not mention the Enterprise serialized novels which thankfully undid the massively unpopular These Are the Voyages, which in my opinion was a poor finale for a fantastic show. With the resurgence of new Trek television series on Paramount+, this meant that there was going to be a significant shift in the landscape of Star Trek tie-in media. As you may or may not be aware, tie-in media is evidently required to match the franchise as it exists at the time, and this inevitably heralded the end of a 2-decade-long experiment of matchful Trek storytelling as they continued the histories of the characters and universes that the Berman era left behind. Realizing this, the authors that had shepherded this mythology for so long had decided to give it a proper send-off, writing and pitching a series of books that would give the finale the gravity it deserved. This is that trilogy. Taking place at the twilight of the post-Nemesis continuity, Star Trek Coda wraps up 2 full decades of Star Trek, continuing the stories of Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and literary-only series like Titan. Taking advantage of the shared continuity, the lives of these characters were continued, changed, and evolved. As the crews went on meeting new challenges and deadly enemies, the world continued to grow and become something with a life of its own. But as with many good things, it had to come to an end. This trilogy is the finale of the ultimate what-if story. Drawing from all corners of the 24th century, Coda features characters from the original series all the way to Titan and the Aventine. Starring Captains Picard, Sisko, Riker, and Ezri Dax, they and their crews must work together to face a threat greater than any of them have ever fought before. I was a little surprised when I realized that with the exception of Tom and B'Elanna, the Voyager crew is largely absent from this adventure, but of course realizing there's only so much room, I understand why and appreciate the fact that they were included. Nevertheless, I thought it worth noting. In any case, an old enemy has returned. Collapsing timelines in their limitless hunger, the very fate of the universe may very well be at stake. The combined crews of Captain Picard, Sisko, Ezri Dax, and Riker must work together to face what may be their greatest challenge. I've decided to review the trilogy as a whole because it is, at least in my opinion, the only way they can be read. Given its status as the wrap-up to the entire Star Trek literary universe post-Nemesis, if you've come this far, you wouldn't read one without having read the others. That said, I highly recommend both these books and the authors that wrote them, with their work being the highest caliber of Star Trek fiction. This story is a tale in 3 parts. Designed to end a shared universe developed through the efforts of more than 25 authors, it had to be a big one, and it certainly lives up to the challenge. Faced with an enemy from their past that threatens to destroy all of time, the crews must work together to carry out their final mission. Written by a trio of powerhouse Trek authors, it's a strong finale to a 2-decade-long endeavor. Emotionally gripping with high stakes and deep respect for the world they've built, this story is the kind of finale you hope to see at the end of a long series. Our story begins when it appears time itself is under threat by an enemy long since thought vanquished. Wesley Crusher, a traveler, seeks out his old companions in the hopes of preventing what may be the end of everything. With a temporal apocalypse on the horizon, he rushes to unravel the mystery before time has run out. For everyone. I do absolutely recommend that if you've been reading the Trek Litverse, that you read this one. It starts out strong and only gets stronger as it goes along. Characters that were known only through the books get a fitting last run along with versions of characters we've known for much longer. It's hard to describe this trilogy without spoilers and without hyperbole, but suffice it to say, it is a must-read for any Trek fan. I'd say knowledge of the Litverse is definitely a bonus, but not required, although it does aid with the background of this particular trilogy. Due to its nature as the denouement of a fantastic literary enterprise, it may be less accessible to the casual fan, but if you appreciate good literature, you owe it to yourself to read David Mack. Overall, I'd say that the entire trilogy was a journey I was privileged to take, and one that I knew was going to be a fantastic ride, much like taking a vacation with beloved friends. You enjoy it while you're on it, but you know sooner or later that it has to come to an end. What can I say but thank you to James Swallow, David Mack, and Dayton Ward for the final adventure we all hoped would be a long way off, but are grateful that it was the three of you who wrote them. I would recommend it wholeheartedly to anyone who considers themselves a fan of Trek Lit, and if you haven't, I offer some recommended reading. Any of the Titan series, the Destiny trilogy, Typhon Pact, and Star Trek Vanguard, and if you read nothing else, you've done a good job.
Thanks for watching, and if you liked it, click the subscribe button and leave a comment below. You can also find me on Twitter and a few other places on the web, or support me via Patreon or Ko-fi. Zebra hugs!